Okay, so let's talk about some of these color combos. So I want to actually start with blue. I love starting with blue because blue is the best and the worst at almost everything. Okay, if you're blue, you feel like sometimes you have a split personality because you're like, I'm so great sometimes, and then I actually just annoy myself sometimes, right? And I say this about myself because I can be the best, but I can also kind of be the worst at times. And it's because tend to have extreme tendencies. Okay. And what I want to remind you about the blue is that they love the spotlight, but only when they feel strong. Only when they feel like they're strong. Okay, drop a 1 if you're a blue and you connect with that. If you're like, oh yeah, that's true. I do love the spotlight, but I actually hate it when I don't feel good about myself, right? Like I don't want to be highlighted if I don't feel good about myself. Because if you don't feel good about yourself, it's like, oh, like that is not something I want. Some of y'all are dropping a 1, but you just are dropping a 1 because you don't like the spotlight at all. I'm not talking about y'all. Okay. I'm talking about the ones who do love the spotlight, but only when they're feeling good. And so when you're coaching a blue, what you have to realize is that they don't want you to dilly dally with small talk. If you have something that's constructive criticism or coaching, they kind of just want you to get to the point. Okay. But they don't want you to end the call after that. Okay, so I'm going to give an example. My girl Connie is on here. She's the one that also says she struggles coaching blue, so I love it. Is because one of the things that I do with her is I'm very direct and to the point, but I do it in like a non-serious way. So what do I mean by that? Like if I'm coaching her, I like laugh as I'm giving kind of criticism because I don't want her to take herself so seriously, because that's when blues get in trouble and get in their heads, is when they start to take every single thing that they do so seriously. And so I'm like, girl, what the heck were you thinking? Why did you do that? Let's talk about it. Like, are you serious? Why are you so afraid of that right now? Let's talk about it. And it's so casual. Because with blues, if something's so formal, they freeze, they tense up, and they get uncomfortable because that is not in their nature. Okay. So if you message them and you're like, let's have a 15-minute coaching call about some of your behaviors, they would literally ignore you, totally ignore you. Okay. Because that's uncomfortable. That is like very formal for them. That is not something they want. They want the casual conversation, but they want the directness of it because blues aren't great at reading between the lines. We'll get off the phone with somebody who's a yellow and think that everything is great, when the yellow really thought that they just told us something that was really hard for them to tell us as a blue, because we don't read between the lines. We need to be told pretty directly. And so if you're dealing with blues and you struggle with them, you have to learn how to communicate it very black and white, but in a casual way. Does that make sense to everybody? I hope that helps, because I think that a lot of times that's something that's hard to do, because if you're a red, you're like, I'm black and white, but you can also be very formal and think that you need to have this big sit down conversation with them over coffee and chat about it in a very comfortable environment. Okay. They don't care about that. They just need it over the phone. Like they're like, hey, we were talking about school, but actually let's just talk about this too while we're at it. And that's okay with them. They don't need to compartmentalize. They view everything as like all in the same box. They don't necessarily separate everything out because their whole life runs together and runs fluidly. And so it's very important when you're dealing with blues to keep it super casual, but to be super direct. Does that help people? Okay. Now, the yellow-red dynamic is very interesting. Okay. Yeah. And when you're a red and a blue, it's very actually similar, because if you're a red and a blue, you actually crave the constructive criticism, but you don't want it when you know somebody has lost respect for you. I need to know that you still respect me if you're talking to me as a red blue, and that you're not judging me. Okay. So as long as you're not judging me and you still respect me, I'm going to take all the criticism from you. And I know that you're on my team. But if I think that you're judging me and you're being like not constructive in your criticism and you're actually giving me a backhanded compliment, I am not going to take anything from that. I'm actually going to get pissed and lose trust. And it can be very contradictory. And so if you are a red yellow, it's not actually, I mean, a red blue, it doesn't actually feel that weird to you to keep things direct and casual, because that's your life. Like, that's your life. Like, you can actually have conversations with certain people. I'm sure people have told you this. You can actually have conversations with certain people and say it in a way that other people would never be able to say to somebody else. Like, people are probably like, how did you get away with saying something like that? And it's like, because your delivery is in a way that's very loving and very direct, but it's also very casual. And so it's like, people are like, whoa, I think she just like kind of like came at me, but like I'm also really grateful for it. I think. And like, people are like, how did that conversation just happen? And they actually crave that tough love from us because of the way we deliver it in such a casual way. And so I think that that's something that can seem contradictory, but when you actually look at it and you break it down, if you're dealing with a red yellow, it's super important. I mean, a red blue, it's super important to know that they know that you respect them and that you're not judging them. And as long as they can keep, I don't want to say status, but like, as long as I love as a blue, this is my blue and this is all blues, and really most people in general, but we want to hang out with people that we know like us. I don't like want to hang out with somebody who like I have to be like on pins and needles around, okay? Because I'm just not a conformist. I don't want to like change who I am around somebody else. And so I think that as long as we know that that person still loves us, they think highly of us, they're still proud of us, they just like, hey, just tweak this a little bit, then we can deal with that a lot more than being like, hey, you have this big problem. We're like, bro, like I can't do that. It's very overwhelming right now. That's very overwhelming. Okay. So let's talk about the red yellow dynamic. So here's the thing is, if you are a yellow coaching a red, you almost half this one is very interesting because you kind of have to get outside of yourself. And I mean this in a way where this is going to stretch you out of your comfort zone and things that you're comfortably doing. And it's very going to depend on what your dominant color is. If your dominant color is yellow and your secondary color is blue, that's going to be very different than a yellow red. It's also going to be very different than a yellow green. Okay, because it just, your personality is going to manifest in a different way depending on your second color. So let's say you are a yellow red coaching a red blue. This is going to be very difficult. And the reason I say that is because a yellow red thinks red, but speaks yellow. Okay. What I mean by that is like, they'll say something like, hey, I really think that we should like work on your consistency. And the red blue is like, yeah, I mean, I know I've just been like working on my consistency for like the last 3 years. So it's fine. And you're like, great. Okay. So we're working on our consistency. Cool. And then you hang up the phone and you're like, great. I just got through to them. We had this awesome conversation and she knows that she needs to work on her consistency. And I really told her. And then the red blue is thinking to themselves, what? Yeah, she just told me something I already knew that I just need to be working on and have been working on for years. Okay. And so it's an interesting dynamic because the yellow part of you wants to give it soft, but the red part of the other person can't receive it if it's not direct, like really direct, like almost to the point where you feel like you have to say, I don't want to hurt your feelings. Okay. And so what you have to do is just understand that the red actually needs that. Okay. And so just because you might be sensitive to criticism, it's actually the same thing other people crave. Okay. Because a red is going to crave the progress part of it. I need to know that I'm getting better as a red. And if you don't give me anything to work on, I spin in circles. Okay. And as a yellow, if you aren't providing that red something to work on, they will get bored and they will lose respect for you. Okay. So as a yellow, you don't have to do it in this very formal, controversial way. All you have to do is say, hey, I noticed some of these things. Or you could say something like, hey, what do you feel like you need to work on? Hey, I know we've been talking about you going diamond for like the last 3 months and it just hasn't happened. I know that, and I want it to happen for you so bad. Like, I want that for you more than anything, and that's one of my main focuses. But what can I do to help, and what do you think has been the missing link? And as a yellow, question asking for to a fellow red is actually going to be so good for their critically thinking brains, because reds are actually problem solvers by nature. Okay. And if you give them a problem, they will solve it. So if you present what's 2 + 2, they're going to come up with the answer come hell or high water. And so what happens is that if as a yellow, you don't really want to say, hey, girl, you've been sucking at posting, okay? You haven't been consistent, worth crap. And you have the worst attitude I've seen. Yellow's not going to say that, okay? However, reds can be very self-aware. So if you can say, hey, what do you think has been the issue? What do you think? And giving them the problem to solve, the reds will solve it. They'll put the pieces together typically. Now, if you're dealing with somebody who is not a very self-aware red, meaning they're an unhealthy version of a red, a lot of times pride and ego gets in the way. That can be very difficult to coach from every color. Even a red to a red. A red to an unhealthy red is actually one of the hardest coaching conversations, okay? Because they're very stubborn. They don't see that they do any wrong. There's a lot of tug of war of power going on, if you will. And so you have to be very careful. And one way to kind of help people become self-aware is to ask them reflection questions in a way where they have to answer it when you aren't around, when the pressure's not on, when the judgment isn't there. So almost even giving them a reflection sheet, saying, hey, what are 3 things you did really well this month? And I want you, and give them questions to come back and then talk about the answers together. And then ask them the simple question, are you open to some coaching? And if they answer, yeah, they put themselves in a position of humility, and you put yourselves in a position of saying, I'm not an expert at this either. If you can humble yourself to another red, they're going to receive so much of the information that you're giving them. So if you say, I'm not necessarily the best at this, I'm working on this too, this is something that I've been through, this is something I learned from experience, they're going to be like, oh good, because she's not talking down to me. If a red feels like somebody's talking down to them, their learning brain goes off and their defense brain comes on, because they want to defend themselves. They want to defend their honor, defend their pride, defend who they've fought so hard to be, right, reds? Right? Like if somebody comes at you and they're like, you need to do this, this, and this, and you're like, who are you? Unless you're Cami or Mark Pentecost, no. Okay. And so you have to recognize that if you're talking to a red, you have to put yourself on the same playing field as them. And they'll know that in order for you to get through to a red, sometimes you have to give respect. I hope that makes sense to people. Okay. What other combos do we have show up a lot?
I did have a question that got asked a lot, and it was people saying, how do you get people, basically, I'm not red, so I can't be goal driven. I'm not red, so I can't work like y'all. I'm not red because I'm not money motivated. Like, we have a lot of people that are not red on our team. We have a lot of yellows. And so what do you say to those people who feel like they can't work towards things like reds can?
That's an awesome question, because I think that is one of the biggest misconceptions in this business and in the color personalities in general, is understanding or believing that reds are more motivated than other colors. Let me tell you, you need to write this down. Every color is equally motivated, but by different things. but by different things, right? So the reason people say in the business that they think, okay, hey, I can't be motivated because I'm not red. The only reason they're saying that is because that's what the business to people, some people equals money. Okay. But what if the business to you started equaling purpose, started equaling impact, started equaling lives changed, started equaling your family's lives changed, started equaling investments, right, into your future. And so I think that when you start to look at, oh, I'm not red, so I just can't like work as hard as they do. That's actually the biggest lie, because yellows are actually the hardest workers if you want to know the truth, okay? And the reason I say that is because the yellows are so motivated by helping, and they will do anything for anybody else. But when it comes to themselves, I don't know I think it was in the book Get Over Your Damn Self, and she said, you have to make a goal that is your goal. That works for most of the colors, but not the yellow color. If it's only a yellow color's goal, they will give up on themselves faster than they give up on something that's outside of themselves. If you tell a yellow you can have an internal impact by working this business, and you can change people's lives every single day, if you go out there and you tell people about the business, if you bring them to Jesus through this business, if you can make money and then you can donate to organizations that you never even dreamt of, and you can even start your own nonprofit, their yellow heart is literally going to explode and work harder than any red I know. It's just understanding that you have to figure out as a leader, what is that thing for them? And you do that by asking really good questions. Okay. And so as you're working through, how do I help somebody become more motivated? It's finding out what motivates them. Because what's happening here is, if you're struggling motivating your team, you haven't found their thing. You're trying to motivate them by what motivates you. If everybody was motivated by Eric Thomas screaming in their face every single morning like I am, I would have a bomb team, but we would all hate each other because we would all be struggling for power. We would all be comparing each other. We would all be doing all of this. And you know what? It would be very boring. And all we would have at our Thanksgiving meal is the turkey. We wouldn't have any of the other good stuff. And that's why it's so important to appreciate every color for who they are and what they bring to the table. And so what you have to realize is you have to motivate them by what they're motivated by. And remind them not of how much money they can make if they're yellow. They don't give a flying butt about how much money they make if they're dominant yellow. What they care about is the impact that they're having, and the people that they're helping, and the lives that they can change, and the hospitals they can donate to, and how many kids they can help with sex trafficking, and how many people that's what they care about. So get to know what part of that is. Okay. If they're green, start talking about how their investments can multiply by X percentage in X number of years if they continue with this business. Show them the growth that the consistency can give them. Have them read the compound effect. Have them understand the power of numbers in this business. Have them understand, hey, here's our 5-year plan if you're dealing with a green. If you're dealing with a blue, here's the thing. One of the biggest things that I've realized is that the difference between yellows and blues, because they're both feelers. Okay. So if you have a yellow or a blue, or if you're both, you are a feeler. You live your life based on your feelings. Okay. And less on results. Now, the difference though between a yellows and blues is yellows love the service aspect of things. I want to serve people. I want to do things. Blues actually love the people. How many yellows have you met that maybe are teachers that say, I love teaching, but my students just drive me crazy? Right? You'll never meet a blue teacher who says that. The blue teacher hates the planning aspect and hates all of that, but they're like, I just love my students. Okay. And it's not one is not good or bad. Okay. Because both are important. And so understanding that if you're dealing with a blue, you're going to talk about the people and the people that they're close to, the people they care about. A blue typically will not give the shirt off their back to a stranger. A yellow will, because they like the service. The blue is saying, do I like you? If I like you, you can have the shirt off my back. If they like you, if they care about you, they'll do anything for you. But they do it because they care about you, not because of the service part. Does that make sense to people? I want to make sure, I don't know if I explained that well, but I want to make sure that that distinction is very clear. And so when you're talking about, okay, good. When you're talking about yellows and blues, understanding like, okay, what part is the most important to them? I hope that answered your question, Shey. Let me look at some of these other.
No, you did. But I wanted to ask one more kind of pertaining to that. So blue yellow is people oriented and green red typically is not. So some of us have people on our team or people that are on here that are red green, and it's hard to get off that toxic side, and that, you know, the negative side of the red and the negative side of the yellow, especially when you're both, because it's not that it's a bad thing, they just don't relate to what a yellow blue would see, you know, of wanting to serve people and love people in that way. It's just not the way they think. And so how can someone that's red green that has those two color personalities, is not super people oriented, grow that side?
Yes. So this is such a good question, but I think empathy is one of the most underrated qualities in leadership, in my opinion. If you can empathize with somebody and put yourself in their shoes and try to see things from their perspective, not saying, I want to go stand in their shoes. You saying, I want to go stand in their head. Those are two different things. Because if I put Kelsey in Shey's shoes, that doesn't do anything. But if I say, I want to start thinking like Shey, what would Shey feel? Those are two separate things. So when we're taught, treat others how you want to be treated, it's actually only applies up until like leadership. Okay. Because once you get to leadership, you can't treat everybody how you want to be treated, because not everybody is the same, navigates the same way as you do and speaks the same language. And so I think that understanding that as a red green, the red part of you, if I say to you, you have to get better if you want that result, you should have a desire to get better, because the red part of you is like, okay, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Okay. And so understanding that also you can't die and on your tombstone put, I had 127,000 GV. When you die, your tombstone is based on relationships. Relationships make up the quality of your life. That's for every color. Okay. But in relationship, people speak different languages. And so I think that understanding that every single aspect of having empathy and being able to think like another person and say, you know, I respect who they are and what they bring to the table is the starting line for becoming a more well-rounded leader, which should be the goal, right? And you shouldn't hang your hat and be like, well, I'm a red blue leader, so this is how I operate. Well, I'm this way, so this is how I operate, and everybody around me has to adjust. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. As a leader, when you study the Bible, Jesus led by serving. And so people shouldn't even know your color. They should feel like, wow, she must be the same color as me after every conversation. Wow, she must be a yellow, because she was so empathetic. Right. And so, wow, she must, I mean, I really try to be green. That's my struggle. Okay. Just pray for me, y'all. But understanding that I value greens, like because I am not greens. I value the green and what they bring to the table and the way their brain thinks so much, because I don't have that. And I crave it and I want it. My husband is green. That's probably one of the reasons why I was attracted to him, because he literally is like this. And I'm like, and he's like, and so he like balances me out because he's red green. And so he like, I told this story one time. I'm like, I was dreaming and I was like 50,000 a month, like put it on my dream board. And he's like, okay, but like, how are you going to get there? And I was like, why would you ask me such a question? Like, that is such, like, you're such a dream killer. Like, just let me dream. Right. And he's sitting here thinking like he's helping me because he's helping me come up with a plan. Do you see how such a small thing, that miscommunication, can literally change something? Like something so little like that. If I don't understand that he's green and that's how his brain thinks, I'm feeling personally attacked. Like he's saying I can't do it. Because I would never say how. Like I would never ask somebody how, because that's not how my brain works. I'd just be like, yes, girl, you go get that. I literally know you can do it. And that's what I was expecting him to do, because we expect that. That's what we kind of want people to treat us how we would treat them, but it just doesn't work out like that. So as you are working through whatever color it is, but especially with a red green, your value is put so heavily on results, and you struggle probably with your own internal battle of doing. And so you feel like if you do nothing, you are nothing. And you know what happens, that if you feel that way, then you think that way about other people, and that's dangerous. So if that person does nothing for me, then they are nothing to me. And that is not love. That is not leadership. That is not, and that is just, I'm not saying, I'm not accusing, if you feel personally attacked, I'm sorry. And I'm not saying that you're a bad person. It's just, you have to check yourself before you wreck yourself, because I think that in every way, shape, and form, we have to love people where they are, and just knowing they bring something that you can't bring to the table. Like because I'm red, blue, when I have yellow greens, I love them hard, because that's all I know how to do. Because I feel like, you know what? I want to learn from them. I want to know how I can see what they're seeing. And so it's such a good question asking, like place to be when you are something like opposite. It shouldn't intimidate you. It should intrigue you to ask more questions, to learn, and to say, you know what? Hey, how do you feel about this? Hey, how are you feeling about your check? And understanding when those colors, every color has like this danger zone of thinking too much, and understanding where that can be. But I think the biggest thing, I saw somebody ask too, where they said, if you are a red leading a yellow, okay, this is a really good thing too, and it goes along kind of with what I'm saying, is if you're a red leading a yellow, then you need to start asking, hey, how are you feeling? Because they operate on feelings. Do you guys realize you could have somebody who signs 27 distributors and 100 customers, and you can ask them how they're feeling, and guess what they'll say? I just feel like my business is really struggling. And you could have somebody who signs 2 customers and 4 distributors, and they're like, my business is the best it's ever been. So asking the question how your business is going is almost irrelevant, because your expectations are going to be different than what their own expectations are. So the bigger, more important question is, how are you feeling about your business? Because if you just look at numbers, not everybody is a red green. So not everybody is just going to care about the numbers. There's been times in my business where I was enrolling a lot and I didn't feel great. Right? And there's been times in my business when I wasn't rolling a lot, but I felt like, you know what? It's coming. I know I'm doing all the things. I feel really good about where my leaders are. I feel really good about where my head is. I feel really good about this. And so not putting so much emphasis on the enrollments, and understanding that people bring different things in different ways to the table. But where the miscommunication comes in is where you aren't understanding the value that other people bring by being a different color. That's the core of it all. I mean, if we really want to be honest and transparent, it comes down to you thinking that being a red is better than being a yellow, or being a yellow is better than being a green, or being a green is better than being a blue, or whatever. That's really what it comes down to, and that's a heart issue. It's very similar to the race issue. If you really want to color it like that, right? Like, and understanding, yeah, and I've used this example before of like, hey, some people like sweet potato pie. Some people need the stuffing and the dressing, and some people need the turkey, but it's not a Thanksgiving without the whole thing. And so you have to realize that all of them matter. Okay, Shey, I know I just like rambled for a long time.
No, so good. I'm just like in church right now. Church is in session. Okay, do you want to just kind of like pop back and forth and ask questions off the screenshots that we have?
Yes. So one of the questions that I had is, how are you helping leaders rise and take their own business and run with it? Like almost weaning people off of the boob.
Yeah, so I actually did the corporate training this morning on this exact topic. So if you were on it, then you get to hear this twice. But, you know, when I look at my chart, I was talking about this to Jade the other day, and we were talking about like personally enrolled versus non-personally enrolled, and like what it does for your check and all this other stuff. And she was like, how many of your team is personally enrolled? I was like, everyone. They're all personally enrolled. And she was like, okay, so we've obviously got some good duplication here. So I feel like this is such a good thing because, you know, I'm red, yellow, but I'm pretty much, I feel like I'm a lot of both, and I conflict a lot of different ways. And I always go to Kelsey every time. And I'm like, how do I be nice? How do I not be nice? Because my red's here, but my yellow's here. It's like, you know, conflicting. But, you know, the biggest thing that I feel like helps me grow leadership and, you know, have these leaders that are self-sufficient, that do their own thing, is because I don't do things for them. That's the first thing. I will literally like, okay, they'll send me a screenshot, or typically all of my leaders, especially all of you on here, you don't need me in any other way other than me to fix your problems. You come to me with, this person wants to cancel. I can't figure out this customer's account. This person is driving me nuts. This person won't show up to my, I only get the problem side because y'all are doing your own thing. You're all leaders on here. You know how to answer screenshots and, you know, log into accounts. Like, you know how to fix all that stuff, but it's all problems. It's this, that, and the other. So what I always do is I'm like, okay, well, what would you do? Ask questions. Questions are how you teach people, because they're going to start doing this wheel in their head of like, oh, well, I would do this and I would do that, because they already know what to do naturally. It's a human thing. Like, oh, well, I would probably say this. It's just sometimes we feel that what we're going to say is not nice enough, or not the right way, or not worded the right way. And so if I have people come to me, it's always, okay, well, you know, what would you say? And I'll let you know if I would change anything, or, you know, how would you handle this situation, or what do you want to say? And that's how I get their emotions out and their feelings out. But, you know, especially with my new distributors right now, I legit, y'all, have enrolled 30 distributors in the past 30 days, and I'm dying kind of. I've spent all day on FaceTimes, but the thing is with these new distributors, I walk them through those first couple of conversations. You know, they're sending me screenshots, I'm sending them my script so that they can save them. But after a while, when they start sending me lots of screenshots, I'm like, okay, what would you say back? So I'm not just feeding them, I'm having them go have that validation of not just me giving it to them, but they're like, oh wow, like I can do this. And it's like kind of kicking them out of the nest, because number one, I don't want to do it. And number two, I want to teach them to be self-sufficient. And I know that if you're on my team, or if you're on Kelsey's team, you've got a bomb team page with it's like a Google search engine. Like, I need help with this, it's in there. And so what I do is I direct them to a resource. So for example, I had a girl today and she's like, I'm really struggling with the caption. I said, in our team page, you can search life posts and there's a whole thread of captions for you to find. Go find one. And I'm not going to go find it for them. Or I can say, okay, here's an idea. You can type up your own caption, and then I can tell you and I can edit it if you want me to. So some of you are just, you're thinking you're helping them. You know, it's what we want to do. We want to help them. We want to give them everything, but you're hurting them more in the process by not teaching them to be self-sufficient and not teaching them to go find their own things. Because what you don't want, and Christy talked about this morning, is what you don't want is a team that needs you. And this was actually a hard thing that I had to overcome. I'm pretty sure Kelsey probably talked me out of it and helped me overcome it. But I had a really hard time when my team didn't need me anymore. And I felt like they didn't like me anymore. And it was my yellow side of like, they don't need me anymore. They don't like me. They don't talk to me anymore. Like, I feel like they hate me, but it was really because they wanted to branch off. They started doing their own things and doing their own team Zooms. And in the moment, it hurt me more than I saw the good and the benefit of it. Of my team wants to lead. They want to do their own thing. But I felt so sad because they didn't want to be a part of it. It wasn't that they didn't want to be a part of it, but that's the way that I took it. When really it was literally an eye-opening moment of like, I taught them to do their own thing. I taught them to want to do that and how to do that because they were taught by my example. And so that's number 2. Everything you do is duplicated, whether it's good or bad. Everything is duplicatable. And that's literally on a sticky note right here. So you not showing up, like I was talking to Kels about this before. I have a lot of leaders on my team. Do all of them show up? No. So therefore they're not necessarily leaders in that way because they're not showing up in the way that they should be. Like I've got freaking double diamonds not getting on Zooms at all, or getting on and turning their camera off and not saying a single word. That's not being a leader and leading from the front. I am on every Zoom, whether it's a new distributor training, whether it's a newbie 30, whether it's a live, I'm on every family call. Like every single thing I'm at, because where my face is where my people are. And if I'm there hyping up the chat and super excited and I'm engaged in the thing, what if I was like this? What would my team think? Or what if I did this?
The reason though it's funny is because it's so true, and we know people that do that. We know people that do that. And before I forget, because my mind goes everywhere, I want to speak on what you were saying earlier, because I know a lot of the yellow people were like, but I want to help them and blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing, is that sometimes it can feel mean to say, hey, go look in the team page. Like it can come off almost like harsh, right? And so I would actually recommend sending a voice message, because when they hear your heart saying that, like, oh my gosh, girl, that's such a great question. All you have to do is just go search the team page. Here's how you search it. Let me know if you can't find it. It sounds so different than saying, go check the team page. Right? Like, because that sounds very cold, but if you just voice message them, they can hear your heart. You're saving yourself time, but you're also saving just like so much of the like heartache of feeling like, oh, that was a little bit mean. I don't know if I should send that. Okay, I just erased it and typed it and backed it up. Okay, I don't know. How do I say it without sounding mean? Just say it from your heart, and it's going to sound so much more genuine.
Yeah, and I think too, it's like we're leaders, okay? We have heard the same things on every Zoom. Be consistent, lead from the front, be loud, be excited. We know all that stuff, and we spend all of our day teaching our people, be loud, be excited, do the things, but we forget just how important it is to lead from the front, because you don't realize the influence that you have. You are all so influential, not only to people on your social media every day, but the power that you have on a new distributor. Guys, all I talked about today on this duplication Zoom is relationships. And that's why when Kelsey literally said 127,000 GV isn't going to be on your tombstone, it's relationships. When you have people come into your system, it is not a fast start. It is not a box. It's not a person closer to getting you charted for double. It's not a person that's making you an income. It's a person that once they make connection, they're in for life. Because it was the connection that I made with Courtney, not the fact that I enrolled a customer, not my $17 paycheck, quite frankly, okay? I was like, woohoo, yeah, but it was the relationship that I made with Courtney. So I think sometimes we can use our colors as a cripple or a crutch, and it cripples us because we're like, oh, well, she's this, she's that. Be a human, love them, connect with them, ask them, when I do my newbie FaceTimes, I don't talk about the business at first. I say, what is your life like? What is your job? How can I help serve you and make sure that we can mesh this into your schedule? What is your life like now? Why do you want this business to work? That's the first 5 minutes of my FaceTimes, because I want to make sure that I'm building a connection with somebody, because that is duplicatable. They will be and follow everything that I do now because I'm their friend, before I'm someone that says, okay, we're going to do this. Check the team page. Let's do this. Be a human being. And that will speak loud when you're trying to lead and duplicate people, because they're like, this girl cares about me. This girl loves me. I guarantee you couldn't ask a single person on my team if they didn't think that I valued them. I love them, and that's why I spend half the day on FaceTime. That's my thing, but that's duplicatable because I care and I show up and I'm leading from the front, and it doesn't always mean enrollments, right? Sometimes we're like, well, my team doesn't see I'm enrolling, so I'm a loser. I don't enroll sometimes. Like this past week I've enrolled a lot, but maybe the couple weeks before that I didn't. That's not how I'm validated. It's not leading from the front and only enrollments. It's leading from the front in every possible way that I can. So
So good.
I can
So
ask,
good.
let's see what question I had for you. Okay, so we've got how do you how do you keep the drive for yourself and not need to call someone every time you're in a rut? So basically your own self motivation without using the word motivation.
I think Jesus is the first answer I would give you. If I'm just being completely honest, but I think that um, understanding that it's actually okay to need somebody, but you have to know, am I doing this out of habit or am I doing this out of need? Because so often we call somebody out of comfort and not actually out of need. And it's the habit, it's the comfort, it's the I just like I do it sometimes. I'll be like, babe, have you seen my computer? Oh, it's right here. But like I haven't even looked. I'm just asking because that's a habit. And I know that that's a small petty example, but it extends into a lot more. And so if you're like, oh my gosh, like this person is annoying me, what do I normally do? Okay, my natural reaction, call Shey. We just call Shey and tell her about how annoying this person is. Or what if you said, I'm actually going to call her after I solve the problem and then tell her how I solved it? Because I think that we sometimes just think that we need it when really we're just craving the confirmation, we're craving the reassurance. And sometimes that's okay, I think, in some areas. But when you know that you know that you know, stop doing it. Stop doing it. And I think that it's so it's so understandable and relatable to do that, but it's also not necessarily something that is growing you. And if you really want to grow, you're going to have to make those decisions by yourself. I know for me, even I'm still growing. Like I was talking to a couple of my girls and I was like, this season, like I know that God has put some obstacles that I've had to overcome in my life because he was telling me to leave some of my leaders alone. Because even as a leader, we can need to be needed. Can I get an amen? Like, where's my team? They need me. Why don't they need me? Why is anybody messing? Oh, they're not working. And then we say they're not working when really it's just because they don't need us. And so I was so available that God almost had to put obstacles in my way in one aspect so that I had to have my own things to overcome so that they had to figure out their own things to know that they could do it. And that the only person they were dependent on is him. And when you can recognize that, you know what, like it's not Shey is neglecting you, because that's a very easy cop out. Oh, Shey just cares about her 2.0. How many of you guys have been tempted to say that? I know some of my girls have probably been tempted to say that about mine because it's like she's neglecting me because it's our insecurity speaking. When really, if you called her, she'd be there. She'd answer, but you're in your own head and your own insecurity is speaking. And so what you have to do is get out of your own way and say, wow, maybe I can actually solve this on my own. And I want you guys just to see the difference of the habit of needing somebody and the reality of needing somebody. Because there are times when you are going to need somebody. Like even as an ambassador, there are times when I still need Aaron. There are times when I asked Camping Pentecost for a coaching call this week because I need one. And I've tried to do it and I've tried to overcome some things that I feel like I'm at this spot where I'm like, okay, I need a coaching call. Like I want to grow. I want to get better. Here's my space. But I don't do that all the time. And it's not a habit. It actually was more uncomfortable for me to ask than to not ask. I was actually proud of myself for asking. And so if you get to the point where you're proud of yourself when you ask for help, that's an indication that you really needed it. Does that make sense?
Sounds good.
Okay, cool. Let's see. What is like your best tip for keeping new DTs excited? And like, I'm gonna add to this question. How do you not make the idea of leadership so intimidating?
Okay, so first, I want to ask y'all on here, how many of you have enrolled like a good amount of distributors, and you're like, oh my gosh, like none of them are taking off, and you start blaming yourself, and you're like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I'm just a horrible leader. I may as well just cancel. Like, who am I to think that I can go freaking double diamond because I can't even train a damn distributor? What's wrong with me? All of you. Okay, that's been me this week. I've been struggling so hard with this because it's like sometimes I feel like I go through a couple of weeks and everyone's on fire. They're killing it. Like everything is great. And then sometimes there's a wave where it's like nobody's getting their shopping spree. No one will text me back. Okay, so from what's today? Today is the 10th. Okay, I've enrolled 9 distributors this month, and less than half of them are even texting me back right now. I started my distributor training the way I always have for the last 3.5 years. I've barely changed a thing. And they joined the witness protection program and they're nowhere to be found. And I should probably send a search and rescue party because they're gone. It's not on me. I trained them. I led them. I added the team page. I tried to get them on FaceTime. I loved them. I went through eSuite. I went through the team page, and that's all I can do. It's not my fault. Now, this is a moment for you to check yourself. If you feel like you can't keep your distributors excited, don't just say, oh, it's their fault. Okay, this is the difference. You have to make sure you're doing something and you're checking in with them. I asked Morgan Martin this a couple of days ago. I said, when do you give up on people? Because I don't know how. That's a toxic trait of mine. I can't let people go. Even in friendships, even if they screw me over, I'm still gonna freaking bring you chicken noodle soup when you're sick. That's just me. And so I cannot let people go. I'm literally the person that started the whole DT revamp. If any of y'all's teams have them, I made it. I shared it in the libraries page because I can't let people go. But when you enroll people, all of us want all these people that just take off and run. We want all these distributors that just do all these great big things. But think about all the people you've enrolled that are killing it. You did the same thing with them that you're doing now. It's just a deck of cards. Oh my God, Kayla, literally same comment, same words, deck of cards. You're gonna get a 2. You're gonna get a 4. You're gonna roll and you're gonna get a 6. You're gonna roll, it's not dice. You're gonna flip another card and flip another card and then get an ace. I think there's 4 aces in a deck of cards. I have 4,000 people in my downline and I have 50 people consistently on a leader Zoom. Look at the mountains that they moved. It's not complicated. It's not something that you're missing. It's not your fault that these people aren't taking off. And so when we look at leadership and trying not to complicate it, be a human. Sometimes we have to take away all these, it's like an onion, rip back the layers and get down to what's the core of it. And that is your heart. That is the way you love people. That's the way you show up for them. And leadership is not a walk in the park. It is not a walk in the park. It is hard. I cry many times of feeling like I'm inadequate, or like in the moments where nobody on my team is texting me and I feel like everybody's canceled and left to another company because I feel like they don't love me anymore. And it's so hard and it's emotional. It's up and down, but I wouldn't trade it for a second, because who's the person that calls you when something happens in their life? Your team. Who's the person that calls when they're struggling with something mentally? Your team. Who's the person that calls when shit hits the fan and people are canceling and they don't know what to do? Your team. That doesn't have to do with red. That doesn't have to do with yellow, blue, or green. That has to do with you and the way that you lead them and the way that you love them. And it all comes down to the respect of you showing up. Leadership is just respect. That's all it is. They come to you because they care about you and they love you and they want your help and they want your honor. And so if you're showing up in every way, you're going to learn that through the process. It's like a muscle. I don't go to the gym, but if I did, I'd have abs by now. So it's the same thing with leadership. I read books and I do personal development and I do these Zooms and I show up to I learn things on new distributor Zooms. Literally from our new distributors that share tips at the end. I'm like, why don't I do that? You're a genius and you've been here for 12 days. So just show up every day and you're going to learn how to be a leader and how to love those people, and just stop blaming yourself when people don't work or don't take off, because if you're showing up and doing the things, that's all you can do.
So good. So good. Okay.
Question. Okay, so this is not really like a leadership question, but like, how do you keep up with all of it? Like being a mom, being a businesswoman, being this, your daily tasks, especially because you're blue, you got to really focus on that to get it done. So how do you I know that there's no strategic schedule, but just how do you mesh it all?
So I think what this season has taught me is that you just have to be really good at pivoting. And what I mean by that is shifting, is changing, is adjusting, is learning that it's not always going to look like you thought it was, but that doesn't mean that it's bad. And because 2 + 2 = 4, and that's what we had written down on our schedule, but so does 1 + 3. And I think that if we can understand that there is no right way, there is do I wish that I could just be like Sherilyn Alcala and sit in her desk. I use her as an example all the time because whenever I picture my dream house and my dream office and my kids who are always so put together, yeah, okay, cool. That's not me though. So I think that if we try to have this image of what it should look like, we miss the miracles in the moments, right? And we miss the growth that can take place in the seemingly unextraordinary moments, but that are actually amazing blessings, right? And so often it's one of those things where it's this tug of war of, yes, I want to grow, but I also want to be happy in the progress. And so progress has to be more important than perfection. And as you're growing, you have to learn how to adjust. And I wish we had more time because this is something that really God has been putting on my heart lately is we constantly in this business talk growth. Grow, self-development, get better, grow yourself, personal development. But what we don't talk about is what the hell to do with the growth. Okay, so I grew in here, but my external situation for right now is the exact same and I don't know how to deal with that. Right? And so I think as you navigate through that, the things that used to make you happy, you have to give yourself space to be changed, right? To be different than who you thought you maybe were. And that growth is so important to your success in a long-term capacity in this business, is understanding that growth is unfreaking comfortable. And you do so much of it in this business. And if you're not comfortable with being in flux all the time, you're going to feel like you're constantly failing when it's not always failing. It's just adjusting and pivoting. Thomas Edison said, and I said this on our prayer Zoom this morning, Thomas Edison said, I never failed. I just found 10,000 ways that didn't work. I actually need to use that on my husband because I just told him the other day, I was like, I feel like for 5 years I've been working on time management. Literally, I feel like this whole time in my business, I've been working on time management, right? I've been working on how can I be more efficient? How is this going to work? And then when I figure something out for 2 days, then something else changes. And then a pandemic hits and then civil rights movement hits. And then it's all these things. And you're like, what do I do with all of that? Because there's always going to be something, but then you just adjust. And we're always going to have bumps in the road, but how quickly can you get back on the horse? And so I think that just valuing the progress over the perfection and realizing that you have to give yourself grace. And a lot of times when you go through hell, what feels like hell, you're going through it because you don't know how to give yourself grace and you don't know how to extend it to other people. And so once you go through those circumstances, you learn, oh, I went through that. So now I have to learn how to extend that to other people. So, I don't know. I know that we're reaching an hour and I don't want to go over, but I could do a whole other Zoom on that topic and just talk to you guys for a long time about it because it's been so heavy on my heart of how do we deal with the growth that we're going through? How do we apply it? How do we navigate through life knowing more than we did, but not having a different circumstances than we did?
Mm-hmm. I don't think anyone's complaining that it's going over an hour, to be honest. Kels Shey Summer Camp 2020. So good. Okay. Did you have more questions?
I did, but we have to hop off. We have our team Zoom and our big team Zoom at 10, but we should do a part 2 to this next week.
Yeah, we should. I think we really should. Okay, guys. Love y'all so much. Get to work.
Okay. Love you. Bye, guys.
Bye.